Hi guys, welcome in. It's so good to see everybody. Everybody's kind of filling in here. So today we have a really fun project for you guys. I'm going to be showing you how to make a bracelet on the jewel loom. But first, I am Sarah Ellis. I'm with Beadalon, and I'm gonna show you how to make this really cool bracelet. However, some of you may have already seen a previous class that I did on the jewel loom where we made a jewel loom ring. If you haven't had the opportunity to see that one, I definitely kind of recommend going and checking that one out, maybe even before you dive into this one. And I also kind of recommend that with this project today, since it's a little bit on the long side, that you will watch first and then maybe not necessarily try to work along with me, but, you know, try the project afterwards. Because it's such a long project and there is a lot of repetition, I have it broken down into some segments. So you're not going to see the full project from start to finish, but you are going to get to see all of the necessary steps so that you can recreate it on your own. So I hope that works for everybody. I've got all the steps. We're going to make a really pretty bracelet, and you're actually going to get to see it in a couple of different colorways, which I also think is really exciting because it kind of gives you some options for your project. So I'm going to kind of keep it short and simple when it comes to the jewel loom, since I already did kind of a beginner's project. I'm going to talk you through it. We're going to warp it and everything, but I'm going to try not to get deep dive into the jewel loom so much, because I really do want to get through as much of this project as we can. All right, so let's get down to it, shall we? All right, guys, so this is the jewel loom, okay? And for those of you who are not familiar with the jewel loom, it is just a loom that is kind of travel friendly, doesn't take a whole lot of space. It's really super easy to use and a great beginner project, or a great beginner tool rather, if you are interested in learning more about looming and how to incorporate looming into your jewelry making or your accessories or housewares. There's a lot of things you can do with a loom. So this one is flat, but it does come with a rod that you have to place in it to create this kind of curved shape. So it's flexible but not bendable. So just be sure that you are aware of that, because I don't want anybody to snap their loom in half. It does happen. It's flexible, but you can't bend it in half. On the back, on both ends, you have a little button here. This is where we're actually going to tie our warping material. And so we will be able to tie onto the back and down here, or I'm sorry, at the top and down here at the bottom. All right, so let me show you how to get it set up, and then we will set up the warps, and I'll show you exactly kind of what the project is going to be. So to set the rod with the loom sitting nice and flat, let me raise you up just a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the loom here. Laying flat, you cannot insert the rod. So you're actually going to have to flex the rod, or I'm sorry, the loom just a little bit. And what I like to do, and you guys won't be able to see this part, but I like to use my body, and I push the bottom of the loom like up against my body, and then I will flex just a little bit, insert one of the rods, and then flex a little bit more until I get them both inserted. Okay, so when you have them both inserted, now you have this kind of cradle shape that is really going to help you to create the project, and it's going to give you some room to get your fingers underneath your work as you're working. We are going to take the rod out after we get warped, which is going to be the threads that go back and forth this direction. And removing the rod then is going to have, it's going to give it a little bit more tension, which again is something that you're going to have in order to complete your project. So I'll walk you through all of that, but first let's just kind of take a look at what it is that we're going to be doing. So this is going to be actually the last step of our project, but this is where we're going. So we're going to create this really beautiful beaded bracelet using some of the John Bead Czech glass beads. And I love the bead mixes. They really can, it's like having bead soup just ready to go. And the mixes come in a lot of different shades. So I have a couple of different in blues and greens. So I kind of have spring on the brain. So This is the last one. We're going to create the base, and then I'm going to show you how to do this Picot Edge. That is kind of a step up from the ring project that we did. When we did the ring project, we just created the base and then sewed the two ends together, and that's what created the ring. For a bracelet, we're going to follow the same steps, obviously making it a bit longer because we're making a bracelet instead of a ring. But I'm going to show you how to do this decorative edge, which is just one of many of the different edges that you can put onto your beadwork on a loom. So let's get started with warping the loom. Okay, and I'm going to be using some of the green Wildfire. I'm using 0.008 for this. Just going to take the clip off. And I'm going to turn my loom over to the back. And to get started, I need to tie on to this button. So I'm going to create a little knot, a loop out here. I call this an air knot. That's not a technical term. It's just kind of what I call it. But I start my knot out here away from the loom, and I just did a surgeon's knot. So I wrapped through twice, and then I'm going to place that over one of the buttons on the back. Doesn't matter which one is the top or the bottom, just pick one. And then I'm going to knot that again. And you want to knot around your button a couple of times. You definitely want to be sure that you are nice and secure, because you're really going to be pulling tight on the Wildfire. So you got to be sure that your knot, however you tie it, is not going to come undone. Okay, so I'm going to tie a couple of knots, and then I want to give it a pull. I'm giving it the tug test just to make sure that, number one, my knot is up here towards the top of the button and there's no slack in there. And I want to make sure that the knot is nice and tight. So I'm going to come to the front of the loom, and I have my Wildfire in hand. Now you just want to pick one of the grooves. It doesn't matter which groove. If you want to work towards the left, or you want to work towards the right, or you like to keep your projects here in the middle, it doesn't make any difference. It's just wherever you're comfortable. I'm going to pick a groove, okay, and I'm going to place my Wildfire in that groove. That's what's going to keep all of our warps nice and even, is all of the little grooves here for our spacing. Then I'm going to pull the Wildfire down here to the bottom, and I'm going to pick a corresponding groove. It doesn't have to be the exact match, but you want to get pretty close. In other words, you don't want to do it like this so that you're working at an angle. You want it as close as you can get it, but I don't ever bother counting with it. I just let it get as close as possible. Something else is you want to keep the tension. Notice how I'm holding the Wildfire and I'm really kind of pulling down on it. And you can hear that noise when I pluck the Wildfire. That's how you know you've got it nice and tight. You really want to be sure that you're holding really good tension. Okay, I'm going to keep the tension, come to the back. I'm going to wrap around the button that's on the back, and then I'm going to come back up here to the front. We're using size 8 seed beads. I'm sorry, size 6 seed beads for our project. And to accommodate a size 6 seed bead, I'm going to skip a groove. So I want to be sure that when I come back to the front, that my Wildfire is placed in not the directly next groove, but the next groove over. So you want to skip one. Okay, that's going to make our warp space big enough to accommodate that size 6 bead. And any size beads that you're using, it doesn't matter what size you want to use. You can use huge beads if you want to, but you want to be sure, particularly if you are using a mixed variety of sizes, that your warps will accommodate the biggest bead that's in your design. Back around to the back button. Okay, checking my tension, still keeping everything nice and tight. Coming back up, and again placing into not the next groove but the next one over. We're going to do a bracelet that has 4 rows, so we need 5 of the warps. That's going to create the 4 lanes that we put our beads in. So again, just coming down here to the bottom, repeating our steps, going around that back button, skipping a groove, putting the Wildfire in to the groove, around the button. Be sure you don't accidentally catch your rod when you're going around your button, and then back down. And that's going to give us our 4 lanes, right? The 4 spaces for our bracelet, and the tension is nice and tight. Okay, coming to the back, now we're going to tie off. But before I do that, I like to wrap around the button a few times. This just ensures that if for some reason my fingers slip and I let go of the Wildfire, that I don't lose all of that tension that we've been holding on to. Okay, so now I'm going to cut off, and I'm going to leave myself enough to tie a couple of knots with. Okay, so again, I'm going to tie an air knot. I'm just kind of holding it out here away from the button. I'm going to go around the button and through the loop. Any way that you can tie to secure it is the way to go, right? There's no really right or wrong way when it comes to securing, as long as you're tied tight and whoops, you haven't lost any of your tension. Accidentally went around the rod there. But it happens, right? Happens. It's just kind of part of it. It's a little wonky in the beginning when you're not used to it. You just want to be sure that you don't lose that tension. That's really, really important. So tie a couple of knots around the button, and then I like to take my thread and I'll actually go behind all of the warp threads that are coming up this way. And I like to tie a knot around those as well. So I just kind of loop around them and then pull. And I do that a couple of times just for extra security. I don't know that it makes much of a difference, but honestly, it makes me feel like it's nice and secure. And I've not had one come off, knock on wood. So we're going to hope that doesn't happen today. All right, so I know that this is nice and tight. That's not going to come undone. I'm going to come around here to the front. And now I'm ready to take the rod out and let the loom actually flex open just a bit. That's going to pull out any of the remaining slack that there is. And it's going to make this even, it's going to make the tension even tighter on the warps that you've created. Before I take the rod out though, I do want to place my finger over the top of the warps just to keep them from popping out of place. And again, I'm going to use my body and kind of push just slightly, just to loosen it up enough to remove the rod. So you don't want to bend it. You don't want to go crazy with it. You just barely want to bend, flex, so that you can remove the rod. Now we have tons of tension here and we're ready to create our bracelet. So let's talk about the beads. So I've used a couple of different mixes of the beads. This one has some really beautiful greens and teals and some light blues, and that's what we're going to use to get started with. So I'm actually going to take all of my beads and just kind of dump them out over here on the left of my loom. So if you've never worked with the loom before, that's something to keep in mind. It doesn't matter whether you are right-handed or left-handed, but you always work left to right. So even though I'm right-handed, it did take me a while to kind of get used to that. So we work left to right. And I'm also going to take a needle and give myself a good length of the Wildfire. So I'm going to give myself a good wingspan, which is just about 2 arm lengths if you want. If you prefer to work with a little less, then you may have to tie on later, but that's okay. That's okay. You'll have plenty of opportunities to add more thread if you need to. So just a trick to thread your needle. I like to take a pair of pliers and kind of smash flat the end of my Wildfire. And then I find that I can thread my needle really easily with a nice flat thread. Okay. All right, so before we do anything else, what we want to do is we want to anchor our thread to our warps. Now, remember, the warps are the threads that are going up and down. The threads that are going to go back and forth, those are going to be called our wefts. And so just, it's in the beginning, it's kind of easy to get those two confused, but you've got your warps going this way and your wefts going the other way. So we're going to anchor our thread by taking our needle underneath the first warp, over the second, under the third, over the fourth, and under the fifth. Okay, so we've just kind of woven our needle through. We're going to pull, and we're going to pull to pretty close to the end of our thread, but we want to leave ourselves about 12 inches of a tail because you're going to need that tail for some other things. Okay, now I'm going to go back the other direction. So I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over. Okay, and pull. Now, I'm not going to pull tight because I don't want to distort the warps, but that really just kind of helps to ensure that as we're working, we're not going to pull the tail of our thread loose and pull all of our beads out. Okay. So we have our main thread and our needle over here on the left-hand side. And we're going to pick up 4 of our size 6 seed beads. And since I have bead soup, I don't really have a pattern. If you want to work out a pattern, you absolutely can, but I'm just going to kind of pick up whatever feels right. You know, I'm just going to pick up 4 beads. The bead mix makes them all go together really well, so I don't have to worry if they match or not. Okay, now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going underneath all of the warps. Okay, so the very first pass that you're going to make with your needle and thread is going to be underneath, left to right. I'm going to take my left hand and kind of cup those beads, hold on to the beads, and I'm going to pull my needle and thread to pull out all of the slack. I'm going to take my index finger and I'm going to very gently pop those beads into the rows and hold them there with my index finger, because if I move my finger, they're going to fall. They're not going to stay. We have to go back through those beads with our needle and thread to create kind of a sandwich with the Wildfire to make sure that those beads are going to stay in place. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're over here on the right-handed side with our needle and thread. We're going to go back through those exact same beads, but this time we want to be sure that we're going over the top of the warps. So remember when we started, we were going underneath. Now we want to go over the top. So I like to just kind of imagine that my needle is kind of running along the ceiling of the inside of those beads, right? That kind of helps to make sure that I am definitely going over the top of the warps. You can also see the metal of your needle between those beads, just a tiny little whisper of the metal, but that's going to help you to know if you see that metal, that means you're over the top of the warps, not underneath. Okay. And then you're going to pull. And when you pull out all of the slack, you've created your little sandwich, right? You have your Wildfire running underneath and over the top in the same set of beads. And that's what's going to hold those beads into the warps. All right, so that's basically all there is to, you know, creating the base of the bracelet. So we're going to keep going and build a little bit of this up so that you guys can see the repetition and see over and over again. It doesn't hurt. We're not going to do the entire base of the bracelet, but I do want you to see a good portion of this. So again, taking my needle after I picked up my beads, I'm going underneath the warps. I'm going to grab a hold of those beads and pull out the slack. And now that I already have some beads in place, it's going to be much easier to pop in the next row of beads. So I just slide them up there with my finger, hold them in place. And now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to run from right to left and make sure you're going over the top of the warps. Now, there's no question about it. Once you pull the thread and the needle all the way through the beads, if you have not gone over the top of the warps, your beads will fall out. So you don't have to second guess yourself. So if you pull and you pull all of the thread and you get to the end of the thread and 2 of your beads fall out, then you know that with those 2 beads, you didn't go over the warps. But if they are staying in place, you can be certain that you made it through all 4 and went over the top. So there's really no question. You don't have to second guess yourself. Okay, they're going to stay if you've gone over the top. No problems. All right, so we're just going to keep going, picking up just some random beads as we go. I know that some people do not like to not have a pattern. I have gotten used to it. It used to take me a really long time to not pick up a pattern as I was working, but I've gotten better at just letting it be random. I feel like if you let it be random, it really kind of looks like I liken it to like a messy bun. You know, if you try too hard with a messy bun, you can tell you tried too hard. It's kind of the same way I feel about bead soup. Like, you know, don't try too hard. Don't try to force a pattern, or don't try to force yourself to not do a pattern, because I feel like it definitely does show. So All right, so another set of beads. And I'm going to go back through them. So you have to make 2 passes with every 4 beads that you put in. Okay. So don't try to skip and go to another row. All 4 of these beads are going to fall. So you want to take your needle back through the same beads over the top of the warps from right to left. And that's going to secure those in place and pull. Okay. And as I'm pulling, I'm not pulling really, really tight, but I am pulling tight enough so that there is no space between the little, you know, the wildfire going around that outer warp edge. Okay. You don't want there to be any space there. So you don't want to loop. You want it to be nice and tight. And then on the other side as well, you don't want there to be any loops that are far away from the beadwork and the warps. You want everything to be nice and snug. Okay, so I'm going to pick up 4 more. Taking my needle left to right, going underneath the warps, pull my needle and thread. And when I get all of the slack pulled out, use your left hand to push those beads up into the rows where they go, and then secure them by going right to left, making sure you're kind of touching the ceiling of all of those beads so that you're definitely going over the top of the warps, and then pull your thread. Okay, so once you kind of get the feeling of it, then it really just kind of becomes this rhythmic kind of thing, which is part of the reason that I really love working on the loom, because once you kind of work yourself into, you know, a steady pace, it's really kind of, I don't know, I find it kind of soothing, I guess, because I don't really have to think about it too much. I'm just kind of picking up beads. I don't have to follow along with a pattern, just kind of beading mindlessly, if you will, which is good for your brain every once in a while, I think. So underneath all of the warps, pulling out the slack, popping the beads into place, and then going back through the same beads, right to left, and pull. Okay, I'm going to work up a few more rows and then we're going to move on. So let's do maybe the same amount that we've done here. Let's double that. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's do 7 more rows and then we'll move on. So you'll get a really good idea as to what the base of this, at least with this bead mix, would look like. So I'm going to pick up 4 beads. Okay, I'm going underneath, pull out the slack, the beads in place, and then secure those beads by going back through them, right to left, and pull. Now, if you are curious about measuring for your bracelet while I'm working on these rows, you want to measure ahead of time how long, obviously, you're going to want your finished piece to be, but you want to do about 1 inch less of that in your actual base design, because you need to make sure that you have enough room left over, enough, you know, spacing left over in your total amount to accommodate the ends for what we're going to use. And that's going to take up about 1 inch. So let me just kind of show you real quick what we're going to use. So we're actually going to be using some ribbon ends or ribbon crimps. I've heard them called a lot of different things, but it's basically just a clamp that goes on the ends. This is how we're going to secure both ends. So both of these plus whatever clasp is going to go in between there. You kind of need to subtract that from your total piece so that you don't overbead or underbead, right? You want to be sure that everything kind of evens out as far as your measurements are concerned. And normally with a clasp, you give yourself about 1 inch to 1.5 inches leeway, right? Right. It's just very repetitive. And once you kind of get in the groove it'll work up pretty quickly. You'll find that you'll be able to, after you've practiced a few times, be able to create the base for a bracelet or just about anything else that you want to create on the loom. You can work it up pretty quickly. I feel like the part that people have the hardest time with is just the setup. And that part really just comes with practice. It takes practice to make sure that you are keeping even tension as you are creating your warps. And sometimes it does take a little bit of practice too to insert and remove the rod. I feel like people really kind of struggle with that a little bit as well. It just takes practice, just like with anything else. Okay, underneath, pulling out the slack. We're going to pop those beads into place and secure them by going right to left. Okay, let's do a couple more rows and then we'll talk about what happens next when you have created the entire base. All right, let's do 2 more. So underneath, popping the beads into place and then securing them by going back through them right to left. Okay, and we'll do 1 more. Underneath, pulling out all of the slack, pop them into place and secure. Okay, so once you have beaded the amount that you need for a full bracelet, we were pretty close. We needed probably another section about this big to have a full bracelet. So we've done about half, but you can really see how beautiful that color mix is. I'm going to show you a couple other of the color mixes. So I think you'll like at least 1 out of the 3, if not all 3 of them. So I'm going to sit this one to this side. Okay, we're just going to leave this one just as is, and we're gonna go to the next step. So let me move this one, and I'm going to bring in one that I have done the entire length of the bracelet. So this one has a little bit more green in it, and let's see. This was the agate mix. Again, the size 6 Czech seed beads. These are John Bead, right? You can get any of these mixes at Michael's, and they come in a ton of different mixes. So if you're not feeling the blues and the greens, there's pinks and other mixes. So this is one that I have worked up the entire length minus what I'm going to need for the clasp. Okay, but I want to show you what you have to do next before we can move on to creating that Picot edge. So I stopped right where we stopped with the other. And the first thing that you're going to need to do is you need to reinforce this bottom row. And we also need to reinforce the top row, but we have to create what's called selvage with our thread. And that's actually what our clamp here is going to bite down on. So the first thing we want to do is reinforce this bottom row. So I'm actually going to go underneath the warps with my needle because we're out here on the left-handed side where we've been working left to right. I'm coming out over the top of the warps. I'm going to go underneath the warps with my needle. Okay. And I'm going to tie a knot on this outside warp with my needle and thread. So I'm just kind of looping around the outer warp, take my needle through, okay? And you can see I'm just pulling a knot right up on that outer thread. And then I'm going to take my needle back through the beads. That's going to help to pull that knot into that bead on the edge so that our knot is not exposed out here. Okay, so go through those beads a couple of times, once or twice, at least, and tie a knot to really secure that bottom row. And now we're going to take the rest of our thread and our needle. And remember how when we started, we had anchored the thread by weaving back and forth with just the thread. That's exactly what we're going to do now here at the end. So my thread is exiting out of the bead over here on the left. Okay, so we're just going to pretend like we are anchoring our thread. We're going to take our needle and thread, go under, over, under, over, under, right, and pull. And now I'm going to repeat that going back the other direction. So over, under, over, under, over. Now, this is just like how we secured our thread to start, but I want to push all of this thread up next to the beadwork. Okay, and we're actually going to create a really small section of nothing but the thread. That's what's called selvage. So we're going to keep going. Okay, we're just weaving our needle and thread back and forth and kind of pushing those threads up towards the beadwork. Okay, you want to go back and forth a few times. You want to take into consideration how deep your crimp, your clamp, whatever you want to call it, your ribbon end, you want to take into consideration that that's about 1/4 of an inch deep. So you kind of want, you don't want an entire 1/4 of an inch of the selvage, but you want to be sure that you've given yourself a nice amount that this can really grip onto. So don't overdo it, but definitely don't underdo it. You want to be sure that you've got a good little base here. Okay, so just back and forth. And we're going to repeat this exact same thing at the top too, because we've got to have this little selvage on both ends. And if we were doing this on a larger loom, or it's called the same thing here as well, just doing it with thread, because you can actually use yarns and other things other than just your bead thread, your beading thread here. Oh, that one didn't take. It is a tabby weave, that kind of over and under. That's just a basic tabby weave. And you can do it in your bracelets within your designs without beads with really pretty threads, right? And it adds some really cool dimension and texture to your pieces. But when it is within the work, it's not considered selvage. It's just a tabby weave that is part of your design. Okay, so just going back and forth. Whoops. And you can see we pretty quickly have built up a good little section here of the selvage. Go back and forth a couple of times. One more time back over here. And I'm actually going to tie another knot. I'm running really short on thread, but I'm going to take my thread and my needle again and loop through to tie a knot on that outer warp. Okay. And at this point, I like to take my needle and I will actually go underneath some of these warps at an angle back over. I'm just kind of weaving my way back over to the left-handed side. The only reason that I'm doing that is so that I do not cut my thread off at my knot. You don't ever want to cut right at your knot because you could accidentally cut your knot. So I thread back through at an angle back towards the beadwork. And if I have enough thread, I may even go back through the bottom row, but you don't have to, right? Anywhere down here, you're ready to kind of trim off your end. Just don't cut it right at that knot is basically what I'm getting at. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to very carefully trim my thread. Do not trim your warps. If you've got a thread burner, that works really well as well. Okay, so we have our little selvage here. And before we go to work on the selvage on the other end, we want to take some of our GS Hypo cement and we want to coat this with a layer of this glue. And it's not going to completely set up. It takes about 24 hours for this to completely set, but it will be dry to the point of being tacky, which is all we're going to need in order to finish. So just add your layer of the glue, and then you can come up here and work on the other end while that glue dries. So where we had secured our thread, I need to take that out. So just going to very gently pull that out. And the reason that I'm pulling this out and not just going ahead and creating the selvage with it is because I haven't reinforced this top row. So you definitely want to do that first before you create your selvage on the top. So I need to thread my needle to this top tail that we left. And this again is why you wanted to be sure that you left yourself with at least 12 inches of the tail up at the top when you were getting started. So same thing, I'm going to pass my needle back and forth through these top beads here a couple of times, just alternating over and under the warps and making sure that at least one of these passes, I'm going to tie a knot. Uh-oh. If you go through and you go over both times instead of over and under, your thread will come out. All right, so I'm going to take my needle and again just doing a little loop, taking my needle through just a little half hitch knot on that outer warp and secure. Pull that down tight and then go back through your beads, and that'll help to pull that knot into that bead so it's not exposed out here. All right, so same thing, we're just going to create our selvage. So we are just going to follow the same steps as before, just passing back and forth. And I'm going to speed up a little bit this time so we can go ahead and move on to the Picot Edge. But we do the selvage and the glue first before we start the Picot Edge. That's going to give us an opportunity to let our glue dry as we are working. And we need to start with a new piece of thread too. So we can't use this same thread for our Picot unless you just left yourself a huge tail. And you can plan in advance and do that if you want to. But normally I just start with a brand new thread. Oh, did you see that one? That one came undone because I went the same path as I did going left to right. It's hard to tell. I'm a little bit far away from my work here, so it's kind of hard to see. All right. All right, I'm going to make a couple more passes and then we will add our glue to this and we will move on to the Picot Edge. Okay, so go back and forth one more time. And back again. And let's tie our knot, our half hitch knot here on this outer warp. Okay. And then remember, I like to go underneath, kind of weave my way, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I'm just kind of weaving my thread back over here to the other side, right? It doesn't matter what it looks like because it's all going to be covered up. Nobody will ever see any of that. Okay. And I'll go in with my thread. You don't have to. You can cut it off right there if you want. Okay. I'm going to take my needle away and trim this off. And again, we would We want to add our glue. And just a thin layer is all you need, right? Okay. And you just want to let that dry. And it's going to have plenty of time to dry to tacky before we add our crimp to the end of it as we work on our Picot edge. So for the Picot, you want to take another long length of your Wildfire, okay? Pretty much the same amount that you started working with. So give yourself, you know, whatever you're comfortable with, at least 4 feet, 3 feet, somewhere in there, okay? And you may have to add more thread later, but we're gonna rethread our needle. And we're actually gonna anchor our thread. And actually, I've got green. The thread for this piece was white and I pulled the green. So let's switch over to the white so that it all matches. That's funny. So the Wildfire comes in a couple of different colors. You can see. We started out with the green and now we have the white. All right, so I'm gonna do as much of the Picot as I can. It really is just more repetitive, but I wanna show you exactly how to do it so that when you go to recreate this, you don't have any outstanding questions about this because it's pretty straightforward. All right, so again, I'm going to anchor my thread up here above my selvage for no other reason than to just so that it's anchored, okay? And we'll undo it and sew it back in, you know, at the end. Just leave yourself a little bit. You don't need that full 12 inches again, okay? But we want our thread to be over here on our left-handed side, okay? And we're going to take our needle through the very first row of our beads. And it doesn't matter if you're over the top or under the warps. It makes absolutely no difference. You just want to be sure that you're going from left to right over here, okay? And you're going to pull. And of course, you're going to have this little loop here. But remember, we're going to undo all of this and sew this tail in. For now, it's out of the way, and that's the most important part. Okay, so we're exiting a bead, or the first bead in the top row over here on the right. We're going to take our needle and we're going to pick up 3 of the seed beads. Okay, and remember, these are size 6, so these are 6/0 seed beads. Okay, I've picked up 3. Now I'm going to jump up a row. So I'm going to come take my needle back through the beads. We're going back right to left, but we're going through the next row up. Okay, so when I pull, we'll have this cute little Picot edge of 3 little beads. Makes a little triangle on the outside edge, right? And there are a ton of different patterns and things that you can create for edging, but this is usually the first one that you learn when you're just beginning. It's the easiest one to do. Okay, so 3 beads to make your little Picot edge. Now I'm going to take my needle. I'm exiting out the second row over here. I'm going to go up to the third row. No beads this time, okay, because we're doing one row, or we're doing one side at a time. Coming out of the third row now, I'm going to pick up 3 more beads. Okay, I've picked up 3 beads and I'm exiting the third row. I'm going to enter the fourth row and pull. And again, creates that cute little Picot. Take your needle, go up a row so that you're always exiting on the same side. So we're only doing beads on this right-hand side for now. It takes a whole lot more thread to do both sides at the same time, to kind of go back and forth and do your Picot on both edges. It can be done. It is a little bit trickier, and it takes a ton of thread to do it that way because you're passing through your beads so many different times. So just because I like to save thread, I do one side at a time. Okay, so we're exiting over here. I'm going to pick up 3 beads. I'm exiting this row. I'm going to go up a row, take my needle through and pull. Okay, and then go up a row and pull. Okay. And we're just going to keep going. So we're just going to pick up 3 beads every time. And doesn't matter what pattern you're using. I'm using, I just realized I'm using the beads from the first bracelet. So I definitely have a very mixed matched bracelet here, but it doesn't really matter because what you're getting to see is the technique part, right? All blues and greens go together. So just using the beads that are on the mat here, right? And then you're going to go up a row. Okay. Same thing, picking up 3. Whoops. We're going to go up a row with our needle. And use your fingers to kind of help those beads sit in that little triangle space that you want. And then go up a row, back out over here on the right. And again, 3 more beads. So you're making 1 pass with beads and then 1 pass without, right? Since we're only doing 1 side at a time. Okay, so we'll go ahead and finish up this entire side just so that you can see what 1 side would look like, because you actually can do just 1 side. Nobody says that you have to do picot on both sides. If you were going to make a thin little ankle bracelet, you might only want picot on 1 side, right? If your middle bead of your picot is going to be a drop bead instead of a seed bead or some sort of decorative bead, then you may only want, again, that picot on 1 side. It's totally up to you. A lot of different options when it comes to bead weaving and all of the little decorative extras that you can do to them. Once you've got the base, then you can sew on top of the base. You can do your edging on the outside edges of the base. There's a lot of different things that you can do once you get that base design down. And if you get to the point where you've decided that you really love to do the looming and that you want to kind of include your, you want to include your loom designs in your shop, your website, or, your craft booth. Whoops, we need to go back through those beads without any. The bracelet, just bracelets in general, but your loom bracelets is one of those things where when you go to display it, you can display maybe just 1 or 2 of the bracelets in a couple of different colorways, and maybe put a note, put a little sign with your design that says that, you can do custom colors. So then that way you don't feel like you have to display 17 of the same bracelet because they're all in different colors, right? You can just offer that and say, here's one, I can do this exact same design in, a custom color for you or whatever. So, you don't have to feel like you have to pre-make a ton of these bracelets if you are going to add these to your website or to your booth, right? There's no reason to take 17 bracelets with you if you're going to offer some custom designs. And bracelets are a fun way to make custom designs that are, when your base is pretty much the same, your design is the same, and you're just changing the color, there's no reason, not to at least consider having that as an option. All right, picking up. And just like the base, you can see this works up pretty quickly. I'm running really low on threads, so we may not make it all the way to the end of this one, but you definitely get a really good idea of what that picot would look like if it was just on one edge instead of both. It's just a little added decoration. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna be really, really close to the end here, but without enough thread, I don't think I'll have enough. Oh, maybe I will. Let's try it. Let's try it. See how short my thread is? We'll try it just to see. So close. So when you would get to the edge here, obviously I only had enough thread to do one entire side, and I really don't have enough thread to tie off and make it nice and secure. You definitely would probably want to have added on thread before you get to this point. But you can see what that's going to look like with that Picot edge on one entire side and not on one side. And then you can kind of envision like what it would look like as a bracelet with just the one side done. But what you would want to do, unless you still had a ton of thread, if you've got a ton of thread, then you can just continue the Picot up this side. Okay, so instead of coming from the top to the bottom, now you're just going to work your way bottom to the top, doing the Picot edging up along the other side of your bracelet. If you are like me and you don't have enough, then you want to tie this off pretty much the same way we've tied everything else off. You want to pass through a row or two, tie a knot, pass through, you know, just to tuck that knot into you know, your work somewhere. You don't need to reinforce your Picot edge if you are keeping good even tension on it. If you notice that it's, and you can see mine is very tight. I keep really good tension on everything. So my beads are not super wobbly, but if you see that your edging is a little wobbly, you may want to go back through it and reinforce it if you want to. But for the most part, I tend to not, but you know, again, it's just because I keep really good tension. And so that part, you're really going to have to just kind of play around with it and make that decision yourself. But you absolutely can go back through. You would just follow the same path to reinforce all of those beads. Okay, so we're going to move on to the very last step of our bracelet. So I'm going to take this one and move it out. And I'm going to show you one that I have done the edging on both sides. This one is actually ready to come off of the loom. The glue has dried on both ends. Okay. And I've got the Picot this direction and the Picot that direction. So it really does fill up the bracelet. Remember, we started with a base that was only this wide, but when you add that Picot, it really widens up the entire design. So you get a totally different look than you do with just the plain edging. All right, so to finish this off, to finish your design, what we want to do is we want to cut this off of the loom. And this is probably the most nerve-wracking step of the entire process, because for whatever reason, we psych ourselves into thinking that when we cut it free, that it's all going to fall apart. I promise it's not going to fall apart. So we want to take our scissors, okay, and it doesn't really matter where you cut because of the kind of finishing that we're going to be doing, but if you needed to do some other kind of finishing, you might want to cut on the back towards the button. The only thing that I caution is that sometimes it'll snap, and I don't mean like it's going to break or anything like that, but it will pop back flat. So to brace yourself, I kind of hold on to the bracelet itself and then cut. And you see how it kind of snaps out of your hands. Just be ready for that part, right? Because you've got a lot of tension on the cord and that it's got to snap back. All right, so we've cut free from the loom and you can see nothing is falling apart. Everything is nice and secure. So we're ready to go. We're ready to add our edge or our end. And so I've got two of these little guys and a pair of flat nose pliers. You can just use your regular chain nose pliers for this, okay? I just kind of like these for this. There's two things that you can do here. If you feel like you don't have enough of the selvage, you can actually take your warp threads, what's left, and tie these together, right? Tie a little knot and bring that knot all the way down to the edge of your selvage, but you really don't have to. That's why we use the glue. So that kind of makes that step unnecessary unless you just feel like you need that added security. So you can just trim all of this off now. You just want to be careful that you don't trim your selvage. You want to cut as close to that selvage as you can, right? All right, so that's what we've got. Now we're going to come down here to the other side. We're going to do the same thing. Just cutting close, but you know, it's okay if you've got little wispies at the ends. All of that stuff is going to be hidden. You're not going to see any of that. Now, I sometimes kind of just depending on the piece itself and how I feel about how much of the selvage I have. You can take your crimp ribbon end and apply it directly to the selvage. Or you can take a piece of ribbon, and a lot of times I'll take like a velvet piece of ribbon, and I will glue a piece of ribbon to the selvage just so that my little ends here have a little bit extra substance and thickness to grab onto. Again, not super necessary, but just an added little bit of security if you want to. We're not going to do that. We're just going to apply ours directly to the selvage. So again, you can see how deep the selvage is going to go with our end here. So I'm going to place that over the top of all of that selvage, and then just use your pliers to bite down with your ribbon end, right, over all of that. And you want to be sure that you get it nice and close. So you want to really give it a good squeeze. You don't want it to come undone. Okay, so you just want to flatten that over the top of that selvage, and all of that selvage is on the inside there. And now we do have a little loop, so we can attach our findings to this to make our bracelet wearable. So we're going to do, again, another one of the ribbon ends down here on the opposite end. Just using our pliers to make that nice and flat. Okay, feel like that's really secure. If you feel like you need to add glue to that, you can. I never do. I feel like I never really second guess, you know, the security. I know that that's, you know, I can tug on it and I know that that bracelet is nice and secure. All right, so then I'm just going to pull out my little findings variety pack here from Beadalon. This has got everything I need in here. I'm going to grab a clasp and I'm going to grab 2 jump rings. We're going to add these to the end so our bracelet is complete. So I'm just going to take a jump ring. I'm going to place that between 2 pairs of pliers. I'm going to hold one of those pairs of pliers still and just take one of them to kind of walk that jump ring open, thread it through the loop here. I'm actually going to double jump ring this one. So I'm going to add a jump ring to that. And then same thing, hold the jump ring still and then just close it back. And I'm going to open this one and put on my clasp and then close that back. You can add as many jump rings as you want to here. That's really going to kind of help to, you know, give you some extra length if you need it. And we'll just repeat that over here on the other end. We'll just add 1 jump ring to this end. And we will have a bracelet ready to go. Right. And you can see how pretty the bead mixes really make beautiful bracelets. And they're really, you know, there's definitely one, I feel like there's one of these really cool John bead mixes for every personality. Like there's tons of blues, there's lots of greens, there's purples and pinks. So any kind of mood that you're in, or again, if you're going to offer your customers, you know, a different colorway, you definitely have a large variety to choose from for sure. All right, so I'm going to turn you guys around and show you the bracelet from a different angle, and then I will let you guys go for the day. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope that I have given you all of the steps that you need to create a really fun bracelet on the loom. I feel like the results are going to be really beautiful. I think you're going to be surprised if you've never done this before, or you've only ever created just a solid piece without any kind of decorative edge. You're going to see that that decorative edge kind of takes your piece to the next level and just adds a little extra dimension and kind of intrigue to it, right? Just makes it a little fancier. Not that there's anything wrong with the solid edges. I think there's a place for all of those designs for sure. You can stack these up with your favorites, your other favorite bracelets, or it looks awesome all by itself. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed this project. Definitely, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I look forward to seeing you guys for my next class. Bye guys.